the Dragon Kingdom. Meili's Witchbeast observation record VII, traversing the Augria sand dunes and being a guide to Pleiades' watchtower. Although there were a few unforeseen circumstances, Meili was able to complete the role assigned to her. The battle with the divine dragon Volcanica outside the tower, the scattered books of the dead within its confines, and the flock of bird familiars belonging to someone who was apparently monitoring the tower. There were many lingering problems and concerns left. But none of that is Meili's problem. She brought us here and completed her job, Felt boldly declared while gathering the gaze of the wise men in the assembly, pointing at Meili beside her with her thumb as she straightforwardly praised her work. Receiving that, Meili puffed out her chest, just as she had been told to. Because Felt had warned her that any signs of weakness or a lack of confidence would be taken advantage of. As if to support Meili, the mini crimson scorpion on her head clapped its pincers and made a sharp sound. Meili let out a small sigh at the gesture of her partner that seemed to cut through the tense atmosphere in the assembly and said, "Just as Felty says, I have fulfilled my promise. I've brought Felty and Mr. Redhair back safely, right? Yes, she is correct. Regarding that, the sword Saint Reinhard van Astria swears upon his mistress Lady Felt and bears witness." The one who replied to her query sonorously with his resonant voice was the red-haired knight, Reinhard. He and Felt had accompanied Meili on the journey to prove her usefulness, and his guarantee made full use of the significant meaning of their titles of Sword Saint and Royal Selection Candidate, which meant that, Miss Meili Portrout, what is it? We had various talks amongst ourselves regarding your treatment. You have a past which cannot be erased. Yet on the other hand, you have the ability to fulfill a role no one else can, an ability that has been backed by Lady Felt and Knight Reinhard. Therefore, we hereby promise, by the authority of the Council of the Wise Men, that the kingdom will not incriminate you for your past deeds. It took her a moment to grasp the meaning of the words spoken by the old man with a long beard. Meili became silent and kept blinking. However, understanding and realization finally hit her when she saw the old man, Miklatov, nodding with a pleased look. It was proof that the kingdom of Lugunica had recognized the worth in her existence. Hick, thank Yao. Meili Portrout had successfully acquired the right to be where she wanted to be, a concrete achievement that could be conveyed to the people who weren't there. To Meili, I am glad that you have returned. I humbly extend my congratulations to you for successfully fulfilling your duty. Approbation. The ones who had received Meili after she came out of the assembly following the conclusion of the trial were a young girl and a man in a butler's attire. The mistress and her servant, Anna Rose and Clind. Anna Rose, who was granted a seat at the assembly as a concerned person but didn't have the authority to speak there, probably felt frustrated, but Meili had not let her down. Yes, I'm also really relieved. I'm sorry for making you worry, Anarissy, Mr. Butler. Anna Rose smiled gently at Meili, who was feeling relieved, before immediately putting on a serious look. Our concerns are not for you, the one directly involved, to worry about, rather Lady Felt, Knight Reinhard. The person who responded to her call with a raised eyebrow was Felt, who had exited the assembly alongside her. Accompanied by Reinhard, she closed an eye at Anna Rose's gaze. Yeah, what is it? Just so you know, my opinion hasn't changed regarding the whole give and take since we came out. I don't intend on mackin'. You feel indebted over something like. Is it true that you left your companions at the tower? Anna Rose asked with a slightly stiff voice. Yeah, well, that's right. Felt responded to the inquiry while scratching her cheek with her finger. What Anna Rose had heard was true. Among the group that headed to the Pleiades watchtower, the ones who had returned to the royal capital were 4. Meili, the mistress-servant duo of Felt and Reinhard, and Grassus, one of the twins that had accompanied them. Ezo, the strategist of the Felt camp, and Grassus's sister, Flam, stayed behind at the watchtower and were keeping an eye on its surroundings as a measure against the witch cult, which may have entered the tower or posed a risk of doing so in the future. I have heard that the desert and tower both have harsh environments. So the reason why you left your companions in such a place was because you were accompanying Meili, said Anna Rose, before holding the hem of her dress and bowing deeply on the spot. It was a flawless gesture of etiquette that an aristocrat should uphold, showcasing refinement down to her very fingertips. I sincerely thank you once again for this matter. House Mylode will ensure that the favor received and the sacrifice made by you will be compensated. Furthermore, Anna Rose mentioned compensation, prompting Meili to feel the need to speak up, so she attempted to interject, since the whole situation was caused by Meili. So she felt that it shouldn't bring any disadvantage to Anna Rose because of that. However, no need to worry, Meili. Pipsqueak Anna Rose, was it? There ain't no need to overthink this when it comes to those two. I can't say anything about Flam, but the teach stayed because he wanted to stay. That sounds a little. No, it's true, Lady Anna Rose. Reinhard interjected from his mistress's side to prevent Anna Rose from going further. Ezo said that he has a strong academic interest in the Pleiades watchtower. The reason why we left Flam there was to take care of Ezo, and so that they could contact us immediately in case something happens. Clind squinted his monocled eye at his response. I see, he began. Synesthesia among the twins, no, perhaps it is something more than that. Speculation. I'd rather not talk about what it really is. Felt shrugged at Clind's insight and kept the twins' secret hidden. Meili hadn't been told in detail about that, but she also thought they possessed something close to synesthesia like Clind had speculated. Of course, it doesn't mean that it dispels all of my doubts, but the small fellow was really getting riled up, so it doesn't actually feel like we left him behind. So, there's no need to worry about my people Bane at the tower. Someone will have to be stationed there sooner or later anyway, so it ain't a big deal, Felt interjected. Then I shall consider this a personal debt, replied Anna Rose. Our house is always prepared to respond to your ladyship's requests. Ha, you're a stubborn one. Sure then, whatever floats your boat. It doesn't look like Felty intends on taking her up on that, but thanks to her agreeing, Anna Rissy's concerns have been somewhat taken care of for now. With that settled, the next thing on my mind is, Sue, did Emilia and the others who went to the Empire while we were away manage to find Subaru? Meili inquired about Emilia and the others who had gone to the Valatian Empire in search of the missing Subaru. The time taken for Meili and her companions to reach the Pleiades watchtower was minimized thanks to Clind's ability, but the journey took more than 10 days, including the stay at the tower, so she wondered whether there had been any progress on Emilia's side. However, Anna Rose slowly shook her head in response to that. Unfortunately, we have not received any contact after they safely entered the Empire. It is just that the border with the Valatian Empire has become stricter. Does that mean that something is happening in the Empire? His lordship had stated that he would keep providing updates. There are no updates from him, however, which means there is something preventing him from doing so. Proof. I see. It's difficult to interpret the situation when there's neither good news or bad news, but the fact that there's been no contact makes me anxious. Trouble in the Empire, eh? I would have lent out Reinhard if I could, but Felt started. I don't have a right to leave the country unless extraordinary legal measures are taken, Reinhard explained. Of course, I am deeply worried about Lady Emilia and Subaru, but I know. Maybe I should seriously consider using you and the divine dragon to threaten the kingdom. That's a bad habit of yours, my lady, Reinhard reproached. Felt clicked her tongue in dissatisfaction. She declared that she won't do that in the desert and the tower, but the fact that it's come up as an option shows that the two of them are considering it. A thought then suddenly crossed Meili's mind. The two of you are supposed to be in opposition to Subaru and Emilia, so why are you being so nice to me? Normally competitors are a hindrance, right? So that's why I was wondering. It was strange enough that they had helped out Meili, someone they just had no reason to actively save, but the Felt camp was the Emilia camp's enemy. In fact, they have every reason to stand in their way, so them thinking about saving them is, leaving aside what Lady Felt thinks, I am a knight. It is therefore natural for me to save Lady Emilia, who is a noble and a citizen of the kingdom. Besides, Subaru is a friend. She sure doesn't act like a noble, Meili muttered. While it made sense that Subaru was Reinhard's friend, Meili couldn't think of Emilia as a noble even though she was technically one. Meili tilted her head in wonder, and Felt roughly ran her fingers through her beautiful golden hair and said, Well, A long time ago when I was still a brat in the slums. Are you really talking about yourself, Felty? Meili widened her eyes in surprise at Felt, who had begun talking with a serious expression. It was her first time hearing that she used to live in the slums, but she's a candidate for the royal selection. Back then, I was making a living from stealing, and I was hanging around with some people in a similar situation. Then, one day I heard about a clumsy merchant who was being careless with his warehouse keys. So one thing led to another, and we decided to steal them together. Excuse me, Knight Reinhard, is it fine for me to hear this story? Anna Rose asked. Do keep this a secret, answered Reinhard, putting a finger to his lips. Anna Rose didn't think it would nullify the previously mentioned give and take, but she accepted Reinhard's words with a troubled expression. Felt continued talking next to him. The theft went well, but it seems like someone got greedy once it was over. One of our collaborators tried to get the better of us and hog all of the loot. Things got messy after that, and at the end I ran away with the loot. So, only Felty won at the end, but what about it? On the surface, it just sounds like a story about her taking everything, so I don't see how it relates to why she started talking, the reason why she's helping out Emilia's group. Felt grimaced and continued. Well, you see, if it's just about profit or loss, then yeah, I definitely won. But you know, the food I had with the money I got by selling the loot tasted awful. At that time, I couldn't figure out why since I was too busy surviving day by day. But I know the reason now. It was a matter of feeling right and satisfied, Felt said, flashing her fang, and gave Reinhard, who stood beside her, a firm slap on the back. The clear sound echoed through the hallway as she puffed out her chest. If I wanted to become the ruler regardless of the means, then Reinhard could just go on a rampage and turn the rest of the candidates into dust. But I wouldn't feel good if I got the throne like that, and I wouldn't be satisfied either. So that's why, remember what you asked me before. The reason why I help Emilia and Subaru out when they're in trouble is because I want to win in a way that feels good. Felt peered into Meili's face and grinned smugly. How's that? Meili got overwhelmed by her attitude and vigor and blinked in awe. However, she had been persuaded by the way Felt expressed herself. It's not just for Lady Emilia. Even if it was Lady Crush, Lady Anastasia, or Lady Priscilla, Lady Felt would feel that same way and act, Reinhard commented. You sayin', what I'm thinking is irritating, but yeah, it won't hold water if it ain't like that. Truth be told, I am envious of how Lady Anastasia and her knight Julius acted. If I didn't have my responsibilities, I would have acted the same, said Reinhard, looking down at his hands. Dumbass, Felt responded to his self-admonition with her tongue sticking out. Even Meili could understand why Felt got angry at Reinhard's words. It was disrespectful to the person who had chosen him despite knowing what he was like as a person. And the same thing could be said by Meili regarding Emilia or Subaru. But even so, neither I nor Mr. Redhair can stop being ourselves. Yes, you are right. Reinhard gave a faint, gentle smile, and Meili, albeit slightly, was able to return it in kind. At first, when Reinhard looked down at her, she thought of him as a monster whom she should never approach. But from the journey to the tower, and by exchanging smiles now, she felt like they had grown closer. Surely there might have been progress like this in the relationships I ended or given up on till now, Meili thought. Well, that's what we think. I understand that it's hard for you to ask, but don't hesitate to call out if something happens, Anna Rose, Felt said. I see. You desire to win in a way that makes you feel good. If that is so, then I am afraid I am going to have to disappoint you, for the one who is going to be victorious in the royal selection is my Emily. Anna Rose boldly declared her gratitude and a challenge on Emilia's behalf. And that's what I want to settle without any unnecessary interference. Felt accepted the young girl's challenge with a pleased smile. Beside her, Meili clenched both her hands and solidified her resolve. The session in the assembly earlier wasn't merely about deciding her fate. Meili's work was going to be the achievement of Emilia's group, who were able to secure her pardon. I need to give my beast, Scorpy, she said. Influenced by Meili's enthusiasm, the mini crimson scorpion on her head responded by spinning its tail. Feeling encouraged by that, she gazed out at the distant sky from the corridor window. I'm not sure if I'm truly facing south, where the Empire is located, but I'm certain that Emilia and Subaru are fighting hard under the same sky. So, I've never been someone who thinks so hard. I seriously won't forgive you if you don't return Soph and Suwund, Meili said. She acknowledged the person she was, and as she thought about the people who allowed her to become who she was now, her lips unconsciously curled into a smile. It was an involuntary habit of hers. It was the same unconscious smile that she made whenever she thought about her high-maintenance elder sister with whom she had spent a lot of time. As she was smiling, the sound of high-pitched pincers echoed from the top of her head. End.